summer. As a kid, hardly anything was better than summer. The freedom, the sunshine, the fireflies at night, the fun, no teachers, no homework, no early morning alarm clocks. That magical time of year that's gone all too quickly. Without even looking at the calendar, you can probably feel when summer is fading away. And yet the feeling that summer is almost over is one that's hard to describe, but nonetheless potent. There's a looming and a tug of loss in the pit of your being. At least, there was for me as a kid. At the twilight of summer, you knew that everything that was your normal for June and July was about to change. Even the ice cream trucks were going to disappear. And there's no episode of television that captures this sad, fuzzy feeling better than the adventures of Pete and Pete's What We Did on Our Summer Vacation. Let me explain. Chances are, if you're watching this video, either you have little to no memory of this Nickelodeon show from the 90s, or, if you're like me, you completely adore it. You're probably not surprised that I'm one of the show's biggest fans. The Adventures of Pete and Pete aired for 3 seasons in the mid-90s, and it followed the show's narrator, Big Pete, and his younger brother, Little Pete, through some atypical days of life at home and at school. Rewatching the show now makes me feel like it's 1994 in ways that hardly anything else ever could. Not just because it's filled with plaid outfits or other 90s era fashion choices, but because I can remember so vividly watching it as a kid and thinking, this show is so weird, so out there. How do they come up with this stuff? It's got a distinct tone, look, and sense of storytelling. Take, for example, these main characters from the show, like Pete's friend Artie, the strongest man in the world. Here he is, in this episode, trying to beat up the ocean with Little Pete because they're sad and angry that the summer is ending. Or the boy's mom, who has a metal plate in her head. The metal plate in her head receives its own title card in the show's opening credits. And so does Little Pete's tattoo, Petunia. Have I mentioned this show's weird?
I call this one the Shimmy Shimmy Shake.
And we really didn't know what to say.
Anyway, there's nothing cookie cutter about it. Rewatching these episodes of The Adventures of Pete and Pete, I can say there's nothing like it on Nickelodeon or Disney now. Modern shows tend to have a general shine and relative sameness to them. The Adventures of Pete and Pete, as proven in this single episode alone, has a clear identity. It's really quirky, a little flippant, and it looks a lot more like a student indie film than a polished show for kids. And as a result, rewatching it now, it totally holds up. I love that catchy theme song, Hey Sandy, Pete's dramatic narration, Little Pete's insults,
Suck chatter, musclehead!
And the eccentric perspective on life that this kid's show offers. It also reminds me that, as a child, most everything had the potential to be completely dull and monotonous, or totally exciting and full of wonder with very little in between. When there was nothing to do and you were bored, it felt like the worst thing imaginable. When something as simple as getting ice cream happened, it felt like the moment you'd been waiting for your whole life. And this series really captures those things well. That's why the What We Did on Our Summer Vacation episode works as a melancholy goodbye to summer. There's real joy and sadness attached. As kids, we knew that summer had to end, but knowing that didn't always make it any easier. Now in this episode, Big Pete, his best friend Ellen, and Little Pete become preoccupied with the mysterious life of ice cream truck driver Mr. Tastee. It's the first sighting of Mr. Tastee, an ice cream man with a smiling swirl of vanilla soft serve for a head, with white gloves and a red striped suit, that marks the official start of summer. As Big Pete puts it, no one knows who he is or where he comes from. Just when that first really hot day in June rolls around, you just know the Tastee Mobile is coming to the rescue. Ellen, played by Allison Finelli, spends a few hours each day sweating in her uncle's drive-through quick-pick photo booth, reading A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking, as most teenagers do, until one day she stumbles across a packet of photos from Mr. Tastee. The kids realize this is the chance to find out Mr. Tastee's true identity, to see who's underneath the mask. Little Pete rips open the packet of photos to reveal the secret life of Mr. Tastee. Only, as it turns out, Tastee's stack of photos is filled with snapshots from his world travels in front of landmarks like the Statue of Liberty, though he's always wearing his swirly mascot head, and he's always alone. Weird, right? It makes Mr. Tastee become an even more eccentric character on a television series that's littered with eccentric characters. The kids, not content with their invasion of privacy, decide that Mr. Tastee is lonely and needs some friends. To be fair, they're probably right. Pete, Ellen, and Little Pete make it their mission to forge a deeper relationship with the ice cream truck driver that they barely know. But Mr. Tastee ultimately rejects their request and abruptly skips town. The kids are okay for a day or two, then a heat wave hits town and causes a great blue tornado bar panic. Groups of sweaty, zombie-like children scream his name in the street. Others trade rumors about his whereabouts. Others, like Little Pete, think back to their time with Tastee and wonder where it all went wrong. Tastee feels lost forever, until one day, during a staring contest with a queen bee atop a water tower, have I mentioned the show is quirky? Artie spots the Tastee mobile far away on the horizon. The search for Mr. Tastee becomes the kids' summer obsession. Ellen tracks Mr. Tastee the best way she can while trapped in a photo development booth all day by spotting his ice cream truck and/or his mask in the background of Quick Pick customer travel photos. Little Pete, meanwhile, keeps a lookout from the top of the diving board at the local pool while feuding with the lifeguard. Big Pete decides to find another ice cream man and see what he may know. He interviews the beach's sludge-sickle peddler, Captain Scrummy. Now this also brings up one of the other defining traits of the adventures of Pete and Pete. The show has some of the coolest and strangest cameos in the history of kids television, with people like Iggy Pop, LL Cool J, and a not yet famous J.K. Simmons showing up. Captain Scrummy here is played by Michael Stipe of R.E.M., and it's Scrummy who reveals to Pete that the kids violated the ice cream man customer relationship. "Aren't we here on the first hot day of every summer?" Scrummy asks. "Aren't we? Don't we carry 49 different flavorific flavors, including pineapple blurt? What else do you want from us?" Pete doesn't have an answer for him, and he leaves. What do we want from our ice cream truck drivers anymore after all? I don't know. Pete's also sort of traumatized that Scrummy called him a bona fide sludge sickle man as well, and I could see why. Please don't call me that either. Series creators Will McRobb and Chris Viscardi have a knack for taking the strange things that happen normally and naturally in the world and translating them into something more delightful and absurdist through the eyes of a kid. Elsewhere in the episode, for example, the boy's father finds a fully functional Cutlass Supreme, an entire car, buried in the sand at the beach while metal detecting. It's this kind of thing that would derail or at least define an episode of almost any other television series, but it's almost like an afterthought in this episode. The focus is still on the missing Mr. Tastee. However, for all their other weirdness, Pete and Pete episodes usually get a happy ending, and that's the case here too. Tastee does return at the very end of the summer, and at the very end of the episode, to pick up his photos, and he's nice to the kids before leaving town for the summer, making the transition to fall much easier for our main characters. The ice cream man's mystique is a metaphor for the spirit of summer. Wonderfully sweet, but temporary, and melting away quickly. "I'm an ice cream man," Tastee declares. "I am what the summer is. Fireflies, thunderstorms, butt sweat on the car seat. And when it all goes, I have to go with it." Despite being on screen for only one episode, over the years the plastic-headed Mr. Tastee has developed a sort of cult-like status and inspired a few items of merchandise. More importantly, perhaps, he embodies the universal feeling of the double-edged sword that is summer for children. The excitement when it arrives and the disappointment when it's over. It's this disappointment that's channeled into Little Pete and Artie, symbolically beating up the ocean. Even if you're an adult, even if you prefer sweaters and Chelsea boots to t-shirts and sandals, it's easy to relate to that tug of loss in the final weeks of summer vacation. That symbolically, even if your friend Mr. Tastee returns, you know he, like summer, will have to go away again. Without taking itself too seriously, it's how this episode captures this sentimental moment, that feeling of another summer sliding into history, that makes What We Did on Our Summer Vacation such an essential end of summer viewing. You should check it out. And with that being said, please like this video, share this video, and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll be back soon. Whatever it takes.